Writing is art. Writing is so complex nowadays with its ever evolving dilemmas, but we can find these hearty chants within our soul that convey our own state of mind in our message. What I fail to realize under this complexity is that writing is art and not a tool for your soul, right? I mean, it's not going to be one or the other because, frankly, it's both. And those two together kind of make like a different kind of puzzle piece, which I'll touch back later on. But that's basically writing in a nutshell. My name is Ryan, the author, and this is The Path in the Pen. Before we begin, I would hope to say that I will still continue the journey of being gray and, those milestones, but I haven't really focused yet on Book of Ice and such. So here's an episode dedicated to it. I hope you enjoy the episode. Take care. With that out of the way, let us begin. First off, advice is subjective. Every single person that you come across, their advice is going to be subjective. But hopefully, my advice, whether you're writing a novel, a poem, or short stories and novellas, can help you create your narrative and your story that you want to lay out onto the world and give, the world some change, right? Because everyone wants to change the world sometimes. But I think what's most importantly is that even your subconscious, the books that you read. And I'm saying for you to read a lot of books because the books that you read subconsciously are going to go into your writing at first. And your writing isn't a mix between, at first there'll be a mix between all these books, good or bad, that you've read, right? But soon you'll be able to, take core aspects of these books or whatever, not narrow it down, but just see your voice evolve over time and make sure that your voice stays consistent throughout the book. So then, if you have a narrator, for example, that narrator isn't changing while you're changing, and that's why we have multiple drafts. That's why we have editing, etc. So I just want to get that out of the way. Read a bit. That's part one of the plan. But let's just say most people start with what's the first thing you see, right? You go out into a plain field, right, and you see these wheat flowers, okay, sprouting up from the stems while raindrops trickle down them, right? But what if you were going up the hill and you start smelling something like fresh roses or the smelling of being home for the first time? Is that how you open up your book, that it's returning home after so long of not being there? And what is that smell? Do you start from smell and then you go back down on the five senses? It's your choice. I think we need to mix it up a bit because, frankly, world building is, I don't think I even said we're going over world building, but world building is the literal art of writing. And yeah, it's a literal art because mainly I would say that people think of art nowadays to be, these good old drawings, and, that's stupid. But how are those conveyed in words and in writing and its expression, right? How can one imagine the complexities of your world when they never know what you deleted from previous drafts, never even got the idea of your world, and don't know what's come next and coming up? So you have to make sure that you're going into your reader's eyes for writing. I know I kind of got off track, but we're going to finally begin the episode. That's what I shall go over, folks, and it is the literal art of writing, world building. Okay, hello. All right, we're good. So, world building, most people think settings, first off. I mean, so your setting, your characters, how they, see the world, in a sense. Because the way they see the world can convey that urgency of what your world is in very fast manner. You should be able to convey an idea of what your story is if it's some sort of fiction, okay? In the first chapter, or for some people, first acts, right? You want to make sure, difference between I write fantasy, I read fantasy, high fantasy, they can take a bit time, but normally after the first chapter, second, third, fourth, etc., you're gonna figuring out what your world's about and how the characters have changed from our previous world, because we like seeing those contrasts, I think. So making, I think, the world a lot different from what it is now, but still having those key aspects for relatability is how you get a reader's attention. But I just wanted to say, the physical, the feelings, right? That physical aspect of setting and what it invokes in characters and what it can, help with. And yeah, that's basically what I wanted to talk about first, was just the physical setting, because, like I said earlier, like a wheat field with rain trickling down, do fresh crops. You can get the feeling of what I'm doing, but what if you smell like corn, for example? You smell the corn. You just smell nature, basically, right? I went on a trip to Colorado recently, and basically this is how I got this idea for this episode was, world building, at least for the physical setting, is beautiful. And I think I remember someone said this, that we shouldn't just be creating, we should be discovering more in our minds, so then we can get better and better over time. And it takes back to what I said in previous episodes about being great is getting others' perspectives. So that's why I say read a lot, right? I mean, pretty simple, right? But I would definitely say that I believe I went over this already, but fantasy. Fantasy is just, I write fantasy, okay? So fantasy, that's not my forte yet. It will be in a couple of years, but fantasy, you have low, high, all these different types of fantasies. I think you can try just seeing, because for mine, at least, it's grimdark, so that's my thing, but I didn't really realize it until I started writing my second draft, and I don't want that to happen to you. Figure out what your world building entitles you to write and how long your book is, just to see the grand aspect of genres. Let me get back on world building, though, because I think I need to go over magic. Gosh dang, yeah, magic systems are annoying. Yep. So magic systems, you can do, at least for fantasy, Brandon Sanderson's laws of magic if you want. But most of the ones that I take from are more where I think up ideas of books and stuff, even though I still haven't finished my first novel. Coming soon. You have to have limitations, because if it's Tolkien did great on it, Star Wars did great on it, it's kind of unknown, and you don't really see limitations to it, right? You can't have those magic systems. It's just people nowadays are so enticed by these fantasy stories that's why some people hate Tolkien, because they didn't get more explanation on his magic, right? He has beautiful, simple, purple prose. He has every single type of prose, I feel like, in his writing in a bit. So he's a master at that, but it kind of overwhelms the fact that you don't understand how the magic works in the world. So try, not doing exposition and just giving the straight up facts on subtly, all right? Because you don't want this plan will say, like, if he uses this spell 5 times, he will die. You gotta say, like, his arm goes numb. Let's say he loses an arm for using this powerful spell, because that's how you can subtly incorporate to the plot of what shall happen later in the story, maybe foreshadowing in your world building and magic system, and also building the laws of this magic, that they start getting injuries, and they start, what if the more they use the magic, the more they get insane, the more they start, seeing imaginations, etc., right? Or maybe there's more so of that mental breakdown. Every single time they use a magic system in the middle of the battle, they go and cry on their freaking knees, right? That's limitations, and limitations spice up the story. They bring the story to life because it's relatable in a sense that we don't have that, but everything in this world seems to have limitations, right? Now, there are some exceptions, but most of these things in the world don't have limitations, and if you're going to write a magic system, let's at least incorporate mastery into it, that the more times you use it, the better you get at it. At least do that, because if there's not limitations, there's not anything else, then why, for example, in my story, we have people that don't even barely use magic, but it's because they would much rather prefer, they're more warriors. They're like, I'm big buffy warrior, so I'm going to use a sword instead. You go ahead and do that, right? And we get to see that you don't want to make the magic too overpowered, so people who don't have magic get outclassed by it. Because in my story, at least, anyone can literally pick up a weapon if they focus on their weapon and not their magic, right? And they pick up their sword, right? And then they just start practicing really hard on it, and we get to see them years after years of them practicing. They can get on par with some of the strongest characters because they're good with a sword. And my story is quite grimdark, I'd say. It's not like First Law. It has a lot of blood in it. It has more really great characters, but not as bad, right? Because, I'm just not. My story, at least in book one, isn't like that. Book two, that's different. But anyway, your limitations. Please just have limitations and try making something. Look at your magic system and say, out of all the books I've read or out of all the movies I watched, I know that's probably a lot for some of y'all. Did this somehow become incorporated by this? And in a way, search your characters, search your settings, and search all of that magic, setting, and characters to basically see what exactly is going on there. Because personally, yeah, if you don't, if because when I'm seeing, I think I've read this book before. Oh yeah, a bestseller wrote something just like it. I don't think you should be that insecure about it, but be aware of what you're reading and what you're writing to not make it look like you're just mimicking a best-selling author. Because if you're just starting writing, I know you might be a bit full of yourself, or some people aren't. I wasn't full of myself, but don't bring they have multiple years of experience. These best-selling authors, they have multiple years. So I think Brandon Sanderson said this on one of his college courses, right? That don't if you follow all my advice, you'll basically become a worse version of me. He's basically telling you he has more experience than you, so you're just gonna look like a worse Brandon Sanderson. Or you could do J.K. Rowling. So you basically write like J.K. Rowling. You're gonna be a worse J.K. Rowling, right? You're gonna be a worse Susan Collins. I think we just need to make sure that we are not copying. I mean, I guess that's the first form of book writing, is kind of mimicking a bit. So we can figure out, how our voice is and how we distinguish it from the rest of the world. And, but yeah, world building, phenomenal. I think I went over everything in the sense of what world building is. I'll double check, but, I forgot. Well, I was going to tell you more about world building was religions. I mean, we have religions in real world, but is there going to be enough time in your world to incorporate religion? Or are you going to do like I do in my world where, we believe in God, they believe in different types of gods. We have God of torture, we have God of blacksmiths. But are they realistically going to go to like a church or chapel and stuff, monastery, and, pray to them? My story, no. But in your story, if that's a part of them, and may you want to make it a part of them, then I'd say go for it, because religion and culture and all that, I mean, well, not culture, religion, okay, let's just say religion, that can make your story actually seem, popping off the page in a way. But I was going to get back on culture, because, we see different types of cultures. For example, I have 4 different empires in mind, right? I don't have cultures within the empire because, well, I do. You have the two. It's a stereotypical. It's common, and then kind of like nobility. You got the poor, the rich, and you got the middle people. It's kind of like our world in a way. So I guess that's relatability, but it's really redundant, and it's really it goes old. Every story seems to be using this nowadays, but but the rich, we have still people from the rich in our real society that don't look down on other people or show pity. They actually speak to us like normal human beings. And I feel like a lot of Hollywood movies, a lot of books, some of the rich is oppressive, or most of the rich is like oppressive, you peasant. But in actuality, in the real world, there aren't that many people looking down on you as you think, right? So let's not hype up the stakes of that and just do it because it's just going to look like your normal story that you pick up off of a book. And you don't want to have a normal story. You want to have... Okay, yeah. So you're just going to have to pop it off the page, right? You're going to have to add cultures, but also make sure that each place of the world, that their environment, this is what I'm talking about, how their story is laid out. For example, I have one that's kind of like in the middle of this world, right? Empire. Not in the middle, but we'll just keep with that. And they're warrior-ish. They're at war, but they're not extreme. And then the people that we're going against, that our main characters are going against, we get to see them for the first time. It's quite scary because they just take their time with, war stuff. they take their time. They're not lazy, but we get to see these cultures made that just represents one empire for an outside view. But there are, of course, many cultures, like in the real world, inside these empires, civilizations, etc., organizations, and we get to kind of see that these people are crazy, man. Like, can you just go home and just stay there, and I can live my normal life, okay? That's what one of our characters wants, but I'm not going to go too much into my story here. You have to make sure that the cultures, the religions, the setting, and all that characters shape your world, so you can actually have world building and build this thing that doesn't actually art, the physical part of art. It's normally just looks and stuff like that, which is cool, but invoking also setting and feeling, right? So returning to that wheat field again, cornfield. What does it smell like? Does it smell like home? And what does home smell like? Is mud licking off of pigs? You gotta do like contrast with stuff like that, and find your voice. And I think that's really, I feel like that's creative in a way, and that's the creative flow of world building. I know that I've went over a lot of stuff. Actually, I didn't. I don't know, but that's basically what world building is characters, cultures, religions, setting, and those make your world. I mean, but also the past makes your world. Does the past mistakes actually seem realistic? So let's just say that there's a world, okay? And in your magic system, it's just like someone places like a spell right there, okay? And in your world, spells take like 5 seconds to go off. They're quite like explosive. It's explosive magic, okay? Let's just say that. So they put it right there and they go run. Are you saying that over time, realistically, that place is just going to become barren? Because we've seen in the real world, if there's nothing toxic about the environment, we're just going to build right over it and start over again. And, may investigation and stuff like that. But be realistic that, a barren wasteland, why is it barren, right? Is there, most people do deserts for barren wastelands, but is there lack of water, moisture, rain, or lack of soil being able to grow these crops? Or is there, it's abundant of crops, too much that the shade is killing the plants below it, and we get to see that, simple science, but is these things making it uninhabitable? Is the creatures dwelling in it making it, not, you can't suffice with that, because I can't live with that. There's bears out here, man. I know some people like camping, but just be realistic that, let's just say that, they have aggressive bears out there that if you take one step into their territory, they're going to come and chase you out of their territory. Let's just say that, right? And that would make the area, in a sense, uninhabitable if you can't kill the bear. So, yeah, but my last thing I think I wanted to talk about was, I know I just sound really tired now, but yeah, I'm a bit tired, but why does this all matter? And it's a great question. World building is how your book expands in a person's imagination, and being able to, many things help, of course, world building. The world building, it really shows like that whole grand that aesthetic. And all of these things come to buy into one, and it's just this beautiful masterpiece, and it's realistic. It's not too realistic, because we want still that, at least for fantasy books, that, that reach out into something new. Is it new, but also it has that longing feeling, because we love relatability, but we also love those new things. So can you get the things that are the most nostalgic to people, which obviously our characters are going to have memories. Okay, but, just in getting that form of nostalgia, man. I mean, if you don't get the form of nostalgia, it's quite terrifying, because you're going to get quite, I feel like, bad reviews in my, not personal experience, but just reading reviews. It's too new, right? And it goes back to something I'm going to post on YouTube. Specifically, it's not going to be a podcast episode. It's going to be for Men's Mental Health Month. But anyway, it's going to be about But basically, what I was saying was just full on about basically, we're scared of the new, right? I might have said this in previous podcast episode. I forgot. We're scared of something new because of the fact that it's new, not because we can't do it. We are fully aware of doing something because most of the time people are reaching for a goal that, we get to see people go from rags to riches, etc. No fame to fame. There's better words for that, but we get to see these stories that, give us an outlook that if that person can do it, I can do it then, right? Not better, but if that person can do it, I can do it, right? And we're not scared of the stupid, we're not scared of the challenges above. Some people are. I don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit. But some of us, we're just scared of the new, like what's going to happen with my hobbies, what's going to happen with all of this, and it's crazy, man. We're scared of something new. So I'm just going to say this. If you want to write a book, it's hard. It's going to be hard, like everything is in life. But there's no greater time than yesterday. And yesterday already passed, so the best time is going to be starting now. So I'm going to keep on trying to at least thread the needle with my book of advice through the pursuit of greatness and all that. But I just want to tell you, if you're starting a book, good luck. It's a journey. You're gonna get more confident. I went from introvert to between introvert and extrovert now, where I'm more comfortable in my own skin. I'm more comfortable because I'm able to convey my feelings on a page, right? I'm able to create these characters that are different that, can convey, honestly, part of your soul. Because I feel like, I'm pretty sure Pierce Brown said this in an interview, the author of the Red Rising series, is basically, whenever you make a story character, to make it phenomenal, you have to basically tie your soul to it. Tie it so, it can become that I can see this person living in this world that you created, not in the world that we're in, because you're writing fantasy, you're writing sci-fi, the world isn't the same, right? If you're writing fiction, then the world normally isn't the same, in a sense, because you have those fiction qualities that make your world different and interesting. Because I could write a book about, my daily routine, my diary, but it's just me sitting on the couch all day. I can, go purple prose central on, I'll go over prose in a different episode, on sitting on the couch in the leather or, cloth, brushing against, and the AC turning on, 50 pages after I sit down, and, I'm zoning in. Yeah, but is anyone going to like that, right? Let's make sure that our world building is close enough to our world, but not far away enough. And I think you really need to test the boundary, and you'll really get to see that with, beta readers, family, whoever you can get to just read your story before you publish it. And please, this is my last form of advice. I know it's not world building related. Please do not make a world that you are going to hate, because I feel like you need to write something that you love. And if you hate writing a story, the reader is going to see that, and it's just too much sometimes. Actually, here's the last thing. Don't publish your first draft. I would recommend going through a second draft, third draft, fourth draft. I get that I said writing subjective, but, I think, I forgot which author it was, but he just revised his first draft so much, he edited so much that it was great enough. But I looked at the difference, especially for a first novel, my first draft compared to my second draft. Not look at the last page, okay? We look at the last page of both drafts, and we get to see basically that, the development is phenomenal. I mean, you can do developmental editing, but I just recommend writing a draft too, because you'll end up figuring more out about your voice and getting that experience that you really need. You can see I'm quite excited about writing and stuff like that. I talked about it for 25 minutes, I think. I don't know. I haven't even looked at the time. I'm just wild guessing it, but that's world building, I feel like, is just culture, traditions, setting, characters, magic. And I forgot the other one, okay? I'm sorry, I forget to. But that's world building, man. I mean, it's the literal art of your story. Physical, mental, all that. It's just in your story like that, and it makes it pop off the page, and it makes a story worth reading. And if you want your story to be worth read, then I wouldn't say go full in on world building unless it's epic fantasy and stuff like that, all that. But I recommend one thing, and it is to, I've seen so many aspiring authors say that they absolutely adore writing. And I'm not calling anyone out, but examples of, people have school, they have work. Nowadays, especially for me, we have teenage authors, we have adult authors, we have older authors, and we have children authors sometimes. But you should be able to make time and for your story so you can be better at writing. If you don't, then I don't know if you really care for your story that much. You don't really care for being this a career path. If it's a hobby, perfectly fine, I get that. But if you want it to be like a career path, all that, I recommend, I barely play video games anymore because I'm podcasting, I'm researching, I'm reading, and I'm writing. And all those kind of help me with myself. Maybe not podcasting, but everything else helps me get better at writing. Researching, writing topics. I also have writing. Writing, phenomenal. You keep, the more you write, the better you'll get. And 3, you have reading a book and then basically seeing what the author did to, entice you into the story and make these lovable characters that you absolutely adore and these characters that you hate and these ones that find a middle ground between that. I'm done talking. Quite a long time I've been recording, so I hope y'all take care, man. Hopefully my Book of Ice was half decent, but of course it's subjective, so some people will like it, some people will hate it. I'm fine with that. My name is Ryan the author, and this is The Path in the Pen. Thank you very much. Take care.